All right, great. Well, first, let me welcome everybody here. I am Benny White, and I'm going to be the next recorder from Pima County. And I really appreciate everybody showing up today. Most of you know me, but for those of you that don't, my biography, my experience, my qualifications for this job are listed on those little cards that are available that I've been handing out. We've now handed out about 20,000 of them around the area, and today I'm mailing out another piece to about 60,000 voters. So folks in Pima County will get a chance to know me between now and November. I'm not going to talk a lot about myself or my background or my experience, other than to say that I have 21 years of military service, 14 of that with the Tucson Air National Guard, retired there as a lieutenant colonel. I was also in the Marine Corps for about 8 years, served in Vietnam. And I've been involved in Arizona Republican politics for about 25 years and deeply involved in Arizona elections, both here in Pima County and Tucson, as well as the state at large for about the last 12 years. Very briefly, I want to talk about what I want to do as a recorder, and then I'm going to talk more in depth about what my opponent says she's going to do. And I hope during that you will understand that it is really important that my opponent not be elected as a recorder, because if she is, Pima County and its influence on the state of Arizona will cause us to be more like California than we already are. And I don't think that's a good thing. So what do I want to do? And please start thinking about some questions that you want to ask me. I'm not going to go deep into the detail here about what I want to do, but hopefully your questions will allow me to talk a little bit more in detail about some of these things. First thing I want to do is clean up the voter registration rolls. I've printed out voter registration information for all these precincts that we've been walking in. And when I do that, I find that about 15 to 20% of the information in there has some kind of an error in it. The person has died, the person has moved, there's an address where there's no house, persons are registered at business addresses, and children have moved away from their parents and they no longer live there. Sometimes they have their own families in other states, they vote in other states, but still on our Pima County voter registration rolls. And all of that is really important as we look towards redistricting. And I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But those voter registration rolls need to be correct when we get to redistricting so that we know where to draw the lines for both our legislative districts and our federal districts, as well as the Tucson precincts and where the city council goes and where the board of supervisors goes. So that information is really important. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I want to do is improve and enforce our election laws and our procedures. There are many, many election laws on the books that are out of date, that call for us to do things that we don't do any longer and haven't done for a long time. There are other laws that are simply not written so that people can understand what they mean. I'll give you one example. We have a recount statute. Well, recounts are really important because that race was very, very close in the first place. Well, in our recount statute, it doesn't talk at all about what to do with the mail ballots. And 80% of our votes come in by mail. But we don't even think about, well, what are we going to do with the mail ballots? We recount them, but we don't audit that recount. That needs to be fixed. We also need to go back and look at all the ballots that get duplicated. Here in Pima County, several thousand ballots come in and they're damaged in some sort. They can't be run through the voting machines that count the ballots. Well, those have to be duplicated. When people are involved in marking ballots, they make mistakes. We try to watch that. We try to make sure that there's not any mischief going on there with people marking in votes where there weren't any marks or changing the votes from one party candidate to another party candidate. But you can't be 100% sure of that, at least for the purposes of doing a recount, where a race might have been only 10 votes one way or the other. I know when I did a recount in Wisconsin for the Trump campaign, I found one precinct where an election inspector had changed the votes for 17 voters. Changed them to Donald Trump, as it turns out. But Donald Trump gained about 6,000 votes overall in the state, so the recount benefited him. But that kind of stuff happens. It happens on both sides. And when you're doing a recount, in order to get an exactly correct count, you need to look at those things. Also want to look at new technology. See what we can do to improve our elections, both the efficiency of our elections and when can we expect to get some results. Our results are getting announced later and later and later. A lot of that has to do with signature verification. Right now, 100% of the ballots that we get are verified by human beings sitting in a computer. They look at a signature of record, they look at a signature on a piece of paper, and they say, yeah, those look good. Well, that works good, and the people are trained, and they try to be honest. That's a very boring and monotonous job. Studies have shown that about 20 to 25% of the signatures verified by human beings are not verified correctly. There was a problem with the signature, but the human went ahead and verified it anyway. So there's automated signature verification software applications available now that are used by big banks. Anytime you write a check over $10,000, the bank checks that signature to make sure it's really from that account holder. The Department of Defense uses them. The post office uses that technology in order to read what you wrote on that envelope to get it to the right address. So those kinds of things are available in technology. I hope that they would give us better efficiency, give us more accurate results that could actually be audited when we get through, and we could get those results out a little bit faster and maybe save a little bit of money in the process. So those are kind of the three areas that I want, or two of the areas. The third area is I want to update our recording technology. Right now, the records from 1994 up through now have been digitized. So those can be put online and people can look at them at remote locations. Well, the recorder is responsible for doing all the property records, all the deeds and titles and mortgages and loans and all those kind of things have to be a part of the permanent record that's archived for maybe more than 100 years. Well, 1994 is not a long time ago in the real estate world. I know I bought my house in 1975, and so that record is not digitized. In order to get a record of it, I have to go down to the recorder's office, pull out a microfiche, get that printed, and then I'll have a record of it. So I think that process can be continued. We can get more of those records digitized and use advantage of modern technology for recording these records into a permanent archive. So that's the three things I want to do. All right, let's talk about what my Democratic opponent wants to do. That's going to be Kim Challenger. There's two people in that Democrat race, but Kim has worked in the office for F.N. Rodriguez for about 6 years. F.N. Rodriguez has endorsed her. And so I fully expect Kim Challenger to be my opponent in November. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up here on what we're going to hear about in the general election. Kim is already on record as saying she supports 4 things that are part of the Democrat National Committee's agenda. Number 1, we're going to have all mail elections if Kim gets to be the recorder. Well, there's a lot of problems with all mail elections. I want to talk about that, but I'm going to give you the 4 things first. So she wants all mail elections. She wants same-day voter registration. For some reason, I was roaming around the streets here, have been for 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 months, watching this campaign unfold. And today, election day, I decided I want to vote. Well, I was in St. Louis in 2000 when George Bush beat Al Gore. And I'm sitting in my hotel watching the TV, and it's coming up about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The Democrats went to federal court, got the federal judge to keep the polling places open until midnight. And then the news started covering the buses that were going around picking people up, taking them to the courthouse, getting them registered to vote, and then voting. That's one of the real problems with same-day voting. The second one, again, in my experience in Wisconsin, in the recount up there, was that University of Wisconsin has a campus in Oshkosh where I was. The students come in, they're not registered to vote, so they're going to do same-day voter registration. Well, the rule was they were supposed to get a registration form, they were supposed to get a ballot, fill out the voter registration form, fill out the ballot, deposit the voter registration form, and then deposit the ballot. Well, 31 of those students deposited the ballot and didn't bother with all that registration stuff, but those votes got counted anyway. So I don't know who they were from, whether they were Wisconsin residents or not. So those kind of things happen with same-day voter registration. The third one that Kim Challenger says she wants to do is provide restoration of voting rights for felons immediately upon their release from prison. All right. District of Columbia today just decided that they were going to let felons vote while they're still in prison. So you can see where this is going. All right. Right now, the law is in Arizona that for felons, if you're a one-time felon, you only have one felony conviction. After you've served your probation, after you've satisfied the terms of restitution, whatever those were, you pay your fines, pay somebody some money, whatever those terms were, then you can go to a judge and say, Your Honor, I've satisfied all my conditions and I'd like to have my rights restored. The judge then can look at that record and say, you're right, your rights are restored. With automatic restoration, none of that occurs. You just get to vote again. All right. The fourth thing that she wants to do, like California, is that when you apply, anybody applies for a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. That's called an opt-out system. You would have to opt out, tell them that I don't want to register to vote. A lot of people don't want to register to vote for whatever reason. They're moving around. They don't want their identity to be known. They don't want their address to be known. A lot of reasons why people don't want to vote. But with this opt-out system, you would automatically be registered to vote. The Democrats also want 16-year-olds to vote. Now, I don't know about you, but I wasn't ready to start voting for the president when I was 16 years old. So, again, you can see where this is going to go. All right. Now, Kim talks about her experience working in FM Rodriguez's office. She's been here about 6 years. I've worked with her. She's a pleasant young woman. I don't have any problem with her personally with her. But I've been working in elections for about 12 years. I've worked in every facet of elections. So I've got about twice as much experience as she does. And the difference between Kim and I is I have a law degree. She doesn't have one of those. A law degree doesn't mean a whole lot unless you're dealing with the law. The recorder's office deals with it a lot, both in complying with the law, making sure that the elections are conducted lawfully, and also with lawsuits that come up. The Democratic Party across the nation, and especially in Arizona, is targeting the Secretary of State and selected recorders bringing challenge to the constitutionality of our laws. Our Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, is a Democrat. She ran telling people she was going to change the rules so that it would be easier for Democrats to get elected to office. You know what? She's doing exactly that. And the way that happens is the Democratic National Committee brings a lawsuit against Katie Hobbs saying this statute or this procedure is unconstitutional for these reasons. And then the Secretary of State says, well, I agree with you. Let's not do a trial. Let's not present evidence. Let's not have witnesses. Let's not have all the people that might be affected by this get involved in this discussion. Let's just change the law. We'll do it with a consent agreement. So both parties sign. The Democratic Party signs. Katie Hobbs signs. Our current recorder, FM Rodriguez, has called me numerous times on the phone saying, I don't agree with what's going on. And I ask her, says, Ann, why haven't you intervened? Why haven't you engaged in this lawsuit? She says, well, the county attorney doesn't want to do it, and the board of supervisors don't want to do it. And so therefore, she's remained silent. Well, Kim Challenger I haven't heard anything from her about this. So that's my major concern, is that if she gets to be the recorder, she'll do these 4 things she says she's going to do. She's going to follow that Democratic Party agenda. And in these lawsuits, she's going to agree completely with Katie Hobbs and change the laws in Arizona, bypassing the legislature, not listening to what the people want to do, but just deciding for all of us what the best thing to do is. That's not the way it works. The people control the government, not the other way around. All right? So that's the reason that I would like for you to support me. You can do that a lot of ways, but the best way is to talk to your friends. John Kyle told me a long time ago that elections are won or lost by personal contact with people, word of mouth. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your families, talk to anybody that you work with, places of business that you go to. Send them to my website, bennyforrecorder.com. The information's there. This video will be posted there. There's some other videos posted there. There's a place you can contact me. I'll answer questions. We can argue about things if you want to argue about them. And you can also donate a little money there. There's a place on there to donate money. Many of you have walked for me in the neighborhoods. That's terrific. I really appreciate it. Some of you have donated some money to me. That's great too. As I say, this mailing that I'm going to send out today, it was paid for by your dollars, and I appreciate it. Going forward, we're going to have a big battle. It's going to cost some money. Unfortunately, it costs quite a bit of money to get in touch with all these voters and tell them the story. But I'm going to work very hard, and I appreciate your help. So thank you, and I really appreciate some questions.
I've got a question, Vinny, about mail-in voting.
All right.
So as I understand it, there's a difference between mail-in voting and absentee ballots. Is that true?
Yes.
The way that they're processed.
Historically, an absentee ballot system was used, but it required that you have a reason that you were not going to be present, that you were going to be absent. And so you would tell the election official, I'm not going to be present on election day for the following reasons. Then the election official would let you vote absentee. That might be requiring you to go to their office, or they might send you a ballot in the mail. It kind of varies. Arizona's law is called early voting. The Secretary Hobbs just changed it to all mail voting, but it's still early voting. We get ballots 29 days prior. They're in the mail today. Overseas voters have already voted to a certain extent. We've got about 235 of those ballots already back from our military members and other people that are overseas. But those are mail ballots that come in. One of the real problems with the mail ballot system, and especially an all-mail ballot system in Arizona, is it's not authorized by law. Right now, we have a hybrid system. We still have polling places. We also have the mail ballot system. The mail ballot system is really convenient, and it's really popular. About 75, 80% of our ballots come in by mail. About 10% of those come in by people get that ballot in the mail, and then on election day, they walk in and drop it off at the polling place. All right. But the vast majority of them are processed through the mail. That requires the mail system to work the way we think it's supposed to work. I just read an article today, 3 mail trucks caught on fire. All right.
Of ours?
Well, in the state someplace. We're also counting on the mail workers never going out on any kind of a strike or a work action. What can you imagine how disruptive that would be and how much leverage they would have if they said, you know, there's an election next week and we decided this week that we're going to go out on strike. So all those ballots don't get held. We've also had instances in Pima County where the ballots didn't get delivered. We don't have a very good custody record of where the ballots are when they're not in the custody of election officials. We tell a printer up in Phoenix, mail these ballots out. That printer tells us we mailed those ballots out. So that's a pretty good record. I can look at that record. Anybody in the public can look at it, and we know what happened. But Once it gets to the post office, we don't know which carrier took those ballots out. Did you really deliver it to that person, or did you just drop it off at that address? How many of you have had the mail for your neighbor delivered at your house? You know, so that problem's out there. Now, once that voter signs it, it's got to go back through that system. We don't have any custody record there. I'll get right back with you. Finally, there is a system available by the post office to track individually each piece of mail. In the past, we've looked at that here in Pima County and decided it was prohibitively expensive. And it's not free. But if the voters want that, we'll have to have some kind of a referendum initiative by the voters saying that we want to have that ballot tracking system and we're willing to pay for it. But right now, we don't have the money to do that. So those are some of the problems, some of the many problems with mail ballots. Yes, sir.
So I've talked to voters that get mail ballots, but they're concerned that even if they take that in and drop it off, that their vote may not be recorded properly. So they asked me, and I don't know the answer, if they get a mail ballot, can they still on voting day go into a voter's voting center and vote and actually put their ballot right into the machine?
Well, there's a couple of parts to the answer to that particular problem. Yes, they can, is the simple answer, but they shouldn't. You're able to go to the recorder's website after the ballot returns get started, and you can put your information in there, and it will tell you, yes, we have received your ballot. Okay, if it's not, then you need to start making calls. Call the recorder, see what's going on. Secondly, at the polls on election day, your record is marked as having been sent a mail ballot. Now, you can go in there and tell the poll workers, I never received it. I don't remember getting it. I don't remember sending it in. I want to vote again. And they will give you a provisional ballot. When you vote that provisional ballot, number one, it has to be the right ballot. You can't go over there to another precinct and get it. You got to get it in your precinct. But you cast that ballot, it gets verified. The recorder looks at it and says, are you registered? Is that the correct ballot? Is that your signature on that ballot? And then it will get done. Maricopa County had several 100,000 of those. We have about 15 to 20,000 in most of our big elections. It, again, delays the process. But if you're really not sure, you really didn't remember, then there is a way to do that. And we do have a lot of people that just can't remember whether they mail one or not. They didn't check the recorder's website. They try it again. The system is designed to track to see if you have already sent in a mail ballot. If you have, first mail ballot back is counted. The second one is discarded. Okay, and the record indicates that.
So you're comfortable with the current system with mail balloting, as long as you fill things out correctly in that and send them in, that it'll be, you'll get your vote to be counted correctly the way you voted?
Well, I'm pretty confident it'll be counted. Okay. What happens is every day we get the political party gets a report on ballots requested and ballots returned. And so we can check that. Every day when the recorder has verified ballots, she posts a public record, I will as well, that says that this number of ballots have been verified and they were sent over to the elections department. And then we have observers from the political parties in the elections department looking to make sure that that number of ballots showed up. And then we have a second political observer in the counting room that makes sure that that number of ballots got counted, or if they weren't counted, what happened? Sometimes people don't put a ballot in the envelope. Right. Sometimes the ballot got lost someplace. Sometimes you get extra ballots. You say, where'd that come from? But all that gets sorted out in Pima County. And so I'm pretty confident with the system, with the exception of that that voter signature problem. That I think could stand a lot of improvement and a lot of efficiency and a lot of auditability. Right now, we just kind of have to take their word for it that they did it properly. And that's, normally that's okay. But if you want 100% accuracy and auditability, we need a little bit better system. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Do you have nothing? Anyone else?
I do. As a party, we were put through hoops just to get those requested returns. Can you talk about that a little bit, that process that we're in right now?
A little bit. Our state law says that political parties, either at the county level or at the state level, can request records of voter registration and all of the early voting activity, the request and returns. Our local county recorder has added some further requirements onto that. She requires the county party to sign essentially what's a contract. And it says, I will not divulge this to anybody. I will use it for commercial purposes, etc. And if you don't sign that, you don't get the records. Well, there's nothing in the law that authorizes the county recorder to do that. If the legislature wants to do that, they can certainly do it. But right now, there's nothing in the law to do it. The Republican Party has, for as long as I've been involved, played that game with Ann Rodriguez because we have to get the information. But what the law says is on request, the recorder shall. That doesn't say after they sign a contract. All right. Was that the answer to your question?
Yeah, and the notary part of it too.
Okay. Well, recently, the last year or two, they've added another requirement onto that contract saying that the signatures have to be notarized by a notary public someplace outside the organization. So you got to take it to the bank or something. Again, that's just further requirements. They know who the chairman of the Republican Party is. They know what his signature looks like. They can check their records and get that information. They don't need to put an extra burden on people, hold things up, have an excuse for not sending it with all this extra non-authorized restrictions. I'll take a look at that. Unless somebody can really convince me that it's absolutely necessary for whatever reason, I'll remove all those restrictions.
Good.
Did we check? Check ID when on election day when someone comes in and they want to vote? You have to sign the vote to vote. But I don't remember them checking IDs. Are they still doing that or not?
Yeah, that's the first thing that happens when you enter the polling place. And the legislature recently changed the law so that if you're voting early at the recorder's office or one of the satellite locations where you vote early, you also have to show identification there. That's a little bit redundant because all of those early voting ballots are treated just the same as all the mail ballots. That signature has to be checked against the database before that ballot is ever opened or anything's ever done with it. So it's a little redundant, but we had people concerned that people were going into early voting, getting ballots, and maybe they weren't who they said they were. So the legislature does things a little strangely sometimes. That's one of them. I want to talk about ballot harvesting for just a minute. We hear a lot in the news, some at the national level, some at the local level, about ballot harvesting. At the end of the 2018 election, I did a review of every precinct in the state, and there's a lot of them, to see if I could find precincts where ballot harvesting had happened. Ballot harvesting is a term that's used when somebody goes around through the neighborhoods or holds an event for the purpose of collecting ballots. You haven't returned your ballot. Why don't you give me that ballot? I'll turn it in for you. Or you haven't voted your ballot. Let me help you with voting that ballot, and then I'll turn it in for you. And there was an incident in Maricopa County where a person came into the central county facility up there and had a box that had several hundred ballots in it. Well, the person that videotaped that went to the legislature and said, look here what's happening. People are turning in all these ballots. To me, I look at the law. It says it's a felony for you to give a voted ballot to anyone other than an election official. So the voter committed a felony. It's a felony for you to turn in a ballot for anyone under the ballot harvesting statute, for anyone other than an immediate family member or somebody that you're taking care of. Now, we don't keep any records of that. So the harvesting statute that we have is pretty much unenforceable. I think it can be made enforceable if the legislature wants to do that. But right now, no records kept. Somebody walks in, says, here, I want to put these early ballots in that box over there. I say, fine. How many did you drop off? Who are you? What's your relationship to these people over here? Is there any record kept of it? If you think that it's illegal, who do you complain to? I asked Sheriff Napier, I says, do you investigate election law complaints? He says, no. I think that's done by the county attorney. Well, we have a Democrat county attorney, so those things don't ever get investigated. And because it's unenforceable, the election officials in the state, the entire state, it's not just Pima County, have not enforced that statute since it's been in effect. It's probably a good idea to make sure that those ballots being, but you can put some limits on it. Say you can only drop off one. You can only drop off 4. We're going to keep a record. Who are you? What's your relationship to those voters? What are the voters' names? So at least we have an idea of what happened there. We didn't have some big barbecue out here where several hundred ballots were collected from people. Maybe they were voted, maybe they weren't. Maybe people just filled them out for Raul Grijalva. All right? That's happened. So anyway, in my survey of the counties, I identified a number of counties, primarily along the border counties, a number of precincts, rather, along the border counties, where there was an inordinate voter turnout of mail ballots. That indicated to me that probably ballot harvesting did occur. It happened in Cochise County, it happened in Santa Cruz County, it happened to a certain extent in Pima County, happened a lot in Yuma County, and some in Maricopa County. Not so much in the northern counties in Arizona. So I think it did happen. I turned all that over to the Attorney General. There was never any investigation of it. So yes, it did occur. No, it's not enforced. We can make it enforceable, but that takes some action by the legislature. How we doing? Okay. Well, thank you again for attending, and thank you, Bob Joe, for recording this for us. We'll put it up on the website. Share it. Tell people about it. Oh, yeah. It's Benny for Recorder. BENNYFOR Recorder.com. Pretty easy. All right. I'm also up on Facebook. You can like me there. You can share what I have to say there. Got a Benny White for Pima County Recorder Facebook page. So I'm available. I will answer questions if people want to do it. We're going to work really hard trying to get elected, and I really appreciate all of your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
You got off.